My name is Babara Peterson, and I want to thank the 518 Foundation for giving me this opportunity to speak today. I cannot believe that it's been 40 years since the democratization of Korea movement. It seems like only yesterday. The foundation has done so much to get the truth out there for the nation and the whole world to see. I still try to do my part and tell people about what happened in Gwagnju in May 1980. On May 18, 1980, my family and I had lived in Gwagnju for 5 years. My husband Arnold was working with existing Baptist churches in Gwagnju, Cheollanamdo, and Jeju-do, and helping to start new churches. I was helping with the music at Gwagnju Baptist Church and also teaching English at the YMCA. Arnold, myself, and the children's teacher, Judy Groom, were all with the Baptist mission. We were the only Baptist missionaries living in the city at that time. We had 3 sons, Doug, Brant, and Chris. At that time, Doug was in 8th grade, and Susan Huntley was in 7th grade, and they lived in the dormitory in Daejeon at Korea Christian Academy. They took the bus to Gwagnju on Friday afternoons after school, and then returned to school by bus on Sunday afternoon. Brant was 8 years old, and Chris was 5 years old. The Huntleys, Underwoods, and Dudleys were with the Presbyterian mission. We all lived on the compound in Yeongnam-dong. 2 other Presbyterian families were in the U.S. on furlough during this time. We had a group of 4 Baptist ministers from Florida who were in Gwagnju to hold an evangelistic crusade at the stadium in Gwagnju. On Sunday, May 18, each of the American ministers were in 4 Baptist churches in Gwagnju. Myself and my 5-year-old son Chris had gone with one of the American ministers to church, and the plan was for us to meet the rest of them after church for lunch at the Gwagnju Hotel. During the church service, I could hear gunfire. I did not know where it was coming from. After the church service, we went to get in a cab to go downtown to the hotel, and the pastor of the church told the cab driver to not take us downtown, but rather to take us to my home. After we drove away, I instructed the driver to take us a block away from the hotel and drop us off there. He warned me that the soldiers were downtown and it was dangerous to be there, but he dropped us off where I had asked him to. As the 3 of us were walking down the alley towards the street that the hotel was on, a large group of students turned and came running toward us. Then a big tank-like vehicle turned into the alley and started shooting tear gas canisters our way. We were able to run across to a basement tea room before the students reached us. However, it was too late to keep from being blinded by tear gas. We waited in the tea room for quite a while and then came back up onto the alleyway. We were able to walk on to the hotel. After we reached the hotel and met together, we had all had various experiences in trying to get back to the hotel. By Monday, the situation downtown was getting too dangerous. Arnold and I were walking through a line of soldiers just to get to the hotel and the pastors. Plus, they were seeing atrocities outside the hotel windows. So we decided to move them to our house. And eventually we had to call off the crusade. Martial law had been declared and there was a curfew. It was too dangerous for people to be out and about after curfew. On Sunday afternoon, May 18, we put our son Doug and Susan Huntley on the bus to Daejeon and sent them back to school. Doug told us later that the only traffic they met going on the expressway to Daejeon was military vehicles, truckloads of soldiers, tanks, and other military vehicles. It scared them, and they knew that something big was happening. Normally, when they arrived back at school, they called home to let us know they had arrived and were back in the dorm. However, that night they could not get through on the phone. The phone lines have been cut off to Gwangju. Our son tried off and on all night to call, but could not get through. The next day he went to the headmaster of the school and told him what they had seen coming from Gwangju to Daejeon and that they could not call. He assured them that everything was fine and not to worry. That day after school, Doug went to the bus station, intending to buy a ticket to Gwangju and return home. However, when he arrived at the Daejeon bus station, all the ticket counters for Gwangju were closed. He could not buy a ticket because no buses were going to Gwangju. On his way back to school, he thought he was being followed by two men. When he got back to school, he did not see them and did not think any more about it. The next day, he and Susan were going somewhere and saw the same two men who seemed to be following them. They went back to the school in safety. This happened a few other times. We do not know who the men were nor why they seemed to be following our children. But after he told me the story, I have to admit, it scared me. On May 19, my husband started going out to our churches and checking on the pastors and their families. While out, he would walk around and see students in distress. Starting on Tuesday, May 20, he would walk around and talk with students and others about what they saw going on. Some of the students just wanted to get out of town, so he began using our car to drive students out of town so they could go home. I do not know how many students or carloads of students he took to safety, but there were quite a few. On Wednesday, May 21, we were both home with our two children, Brant and Chris. At about 3 in the afternoon, we started hearing a lot of helicopters in the air, and then we could hear rapid gunfire. We sent the boys to the basement with our agimony, and we ran up to our second-floor balcony to see what was going on. We were hearing more and more rapid gunfire. When we got out on the balcony, we could see helicopters firing down on the crowd and could hear people screaming. My husband ran back into the bedroom to get his camera and telephoto lens. He started taking pictures of the helicopters firing, and in one of the photos, you could actually see the fire from the shooting. That is the photo, along with my husband's testimony, that had a lot to do with the conviction of Chun Doo-hwan. It did not surprise me that in Chun Doo-hwan's memoirs, he tried to defame my husband's name. The memoirs came out after my husband's battle with and death from Alzheimer's disease. Also, on that day, the rumor was going around that the soldiers were going to go house to house and take students out of the homes. Parents were really scared for their children. Pastors began to come to our house with their children and ask if we would let them stay in our house. Of course, we said yes. The Huntleys and Underwoods had the same experience with people they knew. We already had the 4 American pastors and our children's school teacher Judy at our house, but somehow we managed to squeeze more of the precious children of friends into our home. I do not know how many we had, but there were a bunch. Ajimoni and I cooked muguk and rice and also had kimchi. Then the foreign journalists seemed to find our house also at mealtime. So we always had pots of muguk and rice cooking. I do not know how many students were taken, but I do believe that they were loading up students and taking them out of the city and harming them. There are too many parents that still do not know what happened to their children. If those children were still alive, the parents would know. We woke up on Thursday morning, May 22nd, to find out that the military had retreated out of the city. We had a missionary meeting that morning about what we should do about the 4 American pastors. They needed to be in Daejeon by Saturday in order to go to another location to have another evangelistic crusade. As we talked, it was decided that I would travel with them by train if we could find a train station open in the country. They did not speak Korean and needed someone with them that could speak Korean. It was also decided that I would take my two sons and the Huntley's son, Michael, with us to Tajun. The next morning early, we piled into two cars, Arnold driving our car and John Underwood driving his car. As we drove down the street in Yangnamdong, people were standing on the sidewalks cheering us and telling us to tell the world what was happening in Gwangju at the hands of their own government. We made it to the edge of the city and a barricade was set up by students. They had rifles and had masks over their faces. Arnold and John got out of the cars and approached them to talk. A busload of students had us follow them, and they got us close to a military blockade and then turned around and went back. When we approached the military blockade, they told us we could not get through. We then turned around. After we went around the corner, we stopped, and John said he knew a way across a rice paddy to another road. So that is what we did and found ourselves in a small town with a train station that was still open. We bought tickets, boarded the train, and we were off to Tajun. But we left John and Arnold behind. They drove back to Gwangju. When they saw some soldiers and were told they told them they could not go to Gwangju. They told them that they lived there and had family they needed to get to, so they let them pass. As we got to the tunnel that separated Cholanamdo and Cholapukdo, Brant said, "Look, Mom, the trees are waving." I looked out the train window and there were soldiers with branches and camouflage waving to my blonde-haired boys. But yet they were beating, wounding, and killing someone's sons in Gwangju. What does the democratization movement mean to me? It is a lot like childbirth. There is a lot of pain and struggle to birth a child and free a nation. This is what the students and citizens of Gwangju did back in 1980. They birthed a nation that has given its citizens free elections, an opportunity to vote for their president, and live more freely than they ever had. It wasn't easy, and their pain and loss was severe. And to those parents who lost children, I am so sorry. But we need to be proud of them and their bravery. I will never forget when we were in language school in Seoul. We were constantly asking our teacher things about the government and trying to understand. He would look at the walls and say, "Shh, walls have ears." Hopefully that fear is gone and Koreans are free to talk about what they want to talk about. No government is perfect, but being able to be a part of a democracy is much better than the alternative.